What's going on, folks? Some rather relevant Warhammer 40,000 news has come out recently with the release of the 10th edition Custodes, Adeptus Custodes Codex. And you can tell by the title what that is. Every other Warhammer 40k fan and YouTube channel is already talking about it. It has been confirmed in the 10th edition Custodes Codex that there was, at one point, at least one female custodian. I'm not going to go on a crazy rant here in this video. I'm not going to yell and scream. Because to be honest, I'm really not mad. If anything, I'm just going to be incredibly transparent and honest about this as a 40k fan. And that's that I'm worried. I'm worried. If there was any nerd franchise property thing that I thought would never do something like this, it was Warhammer 40,000. Warhammer 40,000 is quite possibly the most politically incorrect nerd franchise universe lore story narrative thing out there. And there is over 10,000 years of fiction. Think about that number, 10,000 years of fictional history in Warhammer 40,000. The franchise itself has existed since the 80s. And in all of that time, both real time and fictional in-universe time, there has never been one single mention of a female space marine or custodian. Ever. Now, and yet now in 2024, in this day and age we're living in, all of a sudden there is one. Now I get it, it's fiction, and you can throw whatever you want into fiction because it's not real. But I ask myself a few questions, one of them being, why is this happening now? And do I think this is a really big problem? So I'll answer the first one. Why is this happening now? It's one of two things. It's either A, because Games Workshop as a company truly believes in the moral and ethical correctness of diversity and inclusion. And I've kind of just started to make my peace with, like, that in and of itself is a good thing. It's definitely not a bad thing to want to be inclusive and represent our diverse population of people on this planet. I totally get the idea of how people want, in fictional stories, people want characters that they identify with. And, you know, if every single character is a straight white guy, you know, I get it. That's what I'm saying. I get it. It's like whenever most people that I've ever asked this question to, I'm like, hey, when you play an RPG, when you get to like make your own character, you get to like make your avatar for the game, do you typically make them what you are? Like, if you're a white guy, do you make a white guy character? Or, I mean, sometimes in a fantasy game you might be playing like an elf or a dwarf, but like typically do you pick, if you're a male playing the game, do you pick to play the male sex? Yes. I mean, if you're a white guy, do you typically make your character white? Like, people want to identify with the characters, and I get that. But it goes all ways. You know what I mean? If, you know, black people want black characters to identify with and that resonate with them. LGBTQ people want LGBTQ characters to identify with and that resonate with them. But, you know, straight white people want them too. It goes all ways. Now, I before anyone wants to start freaking the fuck out, I understand the counter argument to that, which is, well, have the straight white people not had, you know, a monopoly on cool characters in fiction? Fair, but it's still what I would like. Those are still going to be the characters that I identify with. But here's the thing: having a female custodian does not take away the male custodians. It doesn't. And also, sexuality does not play a role when it comes to Space Marine and custodians. They're not concerned with that shit. So that's kind of off the table anyway. So it doesn't detract anything from Warhammer 40,000 by putting this in there. It's still Warhammer 40,000. But it's the why. It's the reason why. Why are you doing this now? And if the reason truly is because you want to champion diversity and inclusion, okay, I guess we can't really fault you for that. That is a morally and ethically sound reason. However, in this day and age, I think most of the time stuff like this gets done, it's simply it's fake virtue. It's virtue signaling, and it's fake. They don't really give a shit about inclusion and diversity. They just they think that by doing this, it will draw more people to their franchise and make them more money, which I also can't. It's their company. They got to make the whole thing is, it's a business. You got to make money. But they think that by having more diverse characters, it will draw in a larger fan base. It will draw in more people to get into it. And this is the reason that I would really have a problem with. They're doing it because they are afraid that if they don't, they're doing it out of fear. They're doing it because they're like, we have to do it to avoid being accused of being sexist or racist or bigoted and prejudiced in some way. And that's a poor reason to change something that is already perfectly fine and good the way it is and is beloved by a lot of people. Making these changes out of fear. Because once you do that, you open up the door now, right? And now all anyone or any entity has to do is make Games Workshop. If they want to see Games Workshop make a particular change, all Games Workshop has told them, if you just make us feel scared, we will bow down, wave the white flag, and acquiesce to your requests. We will submit. If you just make us feel afraid of being accused of being bigoted and prejudiced, we will cave, we will submit. And we'll make whatever changes you want. And here's the thing, there are some changes that should not be made to Warhammer 40,000. Like, for example, like I just said, Space Marines and Custodians should never ever be concerned with like romance or sex or anything like that. Never. That has been brainwashed and psychologically conditioned out of them. So like if we ever got a Space Marine or a Custodian that was like had a love interest, straight or otherwise, that'd be a bad thing. That'd be bad, right? And that's my worry. It's not that I'm over here like women can't be Space Marines. They're just dumb girls. They can't be tough Space Marines. They can't be tough Custodians. They're just weak little girls. Like that. Anyone who watched that Warhammer 40,000 like spoof show Space King, where like oddly enough that this happens shortly after that comes out. Very early on in that spoof, that show. For those of you who have not seen Space King, do a search on YouTube for Space King. It's a cartoon animated show that is parodying Warhammer 40,000. Very early on in that show, they show a bunch of, for lack of a better word, Space Marines invading what looks like Earth, and they're kidnapping all the little boys, taking them and turning them into Space Marines, and they're kidnapping all the little girls and just throwing them into a volcano. Like, it's like, fuck, we don't need women. Women suck. They're useless. Fuck them. Except later on when all the Space Marines are mesmerized by this alien's big boobs. Like, it's that kind of shit. Like, that's not the problem. That with the idea of, like, women being Custodians or women being Space Marines. It's not because it's like, oh, you're just dumb girls. You can't do shit. It's not that. It's, why are you making this change now? Because if you're doing it out of fear, you have just set yourself up in one of the worst positions possible. You have now just told the entire world that you will cave into people's demands out of fear. We don't want to be accused of being sexist. We don't want to be accused of being prejudiced. So we'll do whatever it takes so that those accusations don't get pointed at us. Okay. What happens though when some entity comes along and tells you you need to make X change to Warhammer 40,000 or we're going to label you racist, sexist, bigoted, prejudiced? And that change that they want you to make truly, truly should not be implemented into Warhammer 40,000. Are you going to cave in and submit out of fear? Because that's what doing this shows me. That's what I'm worried about. It's not a problem if there was at one point in time one female custodian. That's not a big deal. But it is a big deal now if what Games Workshop is saying is we're open to any and all changes that keep us from being accused of being bigoted or prejudiced. We'll make any changes you want, just don't label us that. No, Games Workshop with Warhammer 40,000, we kind of thought you guys were the franchise that would reject that shit and be like, look, our property, Warhammer 40,000, it's perfect the way it is. It has a huge following. It has loads and loads of fans who love it to death. It doesn't need to be changed. It's good the way it is. So no, we're not changing. We're not bowing down to your will. We're not submitting to your demands. We're not going to change it. We kind of thought that was you. And now you've done this. And now I'm worried. Now I'm a little worried. So, yeah. I don't really have a lot to say about it other than that. It's like it's not what they changed, it's why they did that change now. Why? Why after your franchise has been around since the 80s? You've published loads and loads of books, like novels, that take place in this universe. So much canon and lore and precedent has already been set down. And you've never once ever said that there was a female custodian or a female space. You've never said that there wasn't a female custodian. But you never said there was since the 80s. Why now? And I think the answer is that Games Workshop the franchise is growing. More people are into Warhammer 40,000 than ever. It's gaining popularity. They're about to get an Amazon live action show. And it's becoming really mainstream. And I think that their buttholes are starting to clench. And they're sitting there going, guys, like at any minute now, the accusations of us being prejudiced and bigoted are going to start flying at us. So we need to get ahead of this. Like we need to start making some changes to avoid. No, you guys need to just stand firm. And tell this, like, for lack of a better way to put it, woke cancel culture to go fuck itself. Don't make changes don't try to fix something that's not broken simply out of fear. Don't do that. So that's my 2 cents on the female custodians now. Take that for what you will. Leave some comments down below, get a discussion started. I'd be interested to hear what a lot of other people think about it. If you like this video, please hit that like button. It really helps out the channel. And if you want to help out the channel even further, check out some of my other videos and maybe subscribe. Other than that, I'll talk to you guys later.